To introduce our speakers, we have Sherif Azer, who is an Egyptian activist, a human rights activist, worked with Frontline Defenders, and is well known for his writing rights for Mada Masr and other publications. I have Miriyam Aouragh, who's a Leverhulme Fellow at the University of Westminster. She researches and teaches on cyber warfare and grassroots political movements and the internet in the Arab world. And Ali Abdulemam, who's a Bahraini blogger, who is in fact apparently known as the Bahraini blogfather, if you look him up online. He created the first pro-democracy news website in Bahrain, Bahrain Online, and during the government's crackdown after the uprising of February 2011, which in fact today is the exact fourth anniversary of that uprising, he was forced into hiding and sentenced in absentia to 15 years in jail for apparently plotting a coup. He's since escaped to the UK, where he's now resident. So delighted to have such a broad spectrum from across the region. Sherif, would you like to speak first?
Miriyam.
Do you have any preference who's going to speak first? No? Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I thought we were following the... all right.
No, sorry, beforehand.
Yeah. Sorry, yeah, so thanks for having me here. I think it's, I'm very happy to see Morocco on the program today. A very excellent talk by Mohammed Boutayeb earlier in one of the sessions. Since Morocco is kind of like, it's an important topic, but it's not really a topic that is widely discussed. And even after the outbreak of the uprisings in 2011 and the Harakat 20 February in Morocco, it's still sort of one of those countries that is a bit underreported or studied. So I think I'll try and give some context as well in my talk, beyond just the sort of current urgent matters. And what is interesting is actually most recently the debate is skyrocketing now because of the Swiss leaks. Has anyone heard of the Swiss leaks? So basically, the HSBC secret account, the HSBC bank that has been telling us about ethical morals, etc. So many of its files were leaked, and what it shows is, I mean, millions of tax money, of course, being hidden and drugs money laundered in Swiss banks. But what is really amazing is, I mean the breathtaking scale of the corruption and the money involved. But what is also really interesting and what has led to a huge outbreak of anger and debate in Morocco is that one of the accounts is the account of the King Mohammed VI of Morocco, and it shows like also, well, I mean, there's no clear evidence yet, but it's highly likely that there is a lot of millions of tax avoidance and maybe even laundering money involved in this. So as I speak, social media and other platforms are bursting now with debates about what this means for in Morocco, and of course it's a stark contradiction with the famous mantra about Morocco being the exception, the Moroccan exception. I'm sure you've all heard of the Moroccan exception since 2011, and that is partly a reference to Morocco's sort of make-believe democracy. And I think this is again partly possible because too little is known about the state. I mean, and as most of you know, the topography, Morocco is literally stated between sort of Africa, Middle East, and Europe. So it's sort of a lot of sort of local, regional, global political and economies are involved in the sort of political system of Morocco, the system which is referred to ordinarily as the Makhzen. So this Makhzen system is this very unique combination of an authoritarian state on the one hand, but one with a dynastic royal family, apparently the oldest royal family in the world, which is constructed around the sort of Sharifain sacred family. I mean, I think all leaders in the Arab world love to say that they are descendants of the Prophet, but this particular monarchy is making this point very clear. And so it has a semi-popular base, which is one of the explanations why it's very hard for social movements in Morocco to actually, when they talk about changing the social or political system, why it's really hard to also talk about the monarchy. And one of the interesting phenomena in terms of the generic slogan of the Arab uprisings, "Sha'b yurid isqat nizam," in Morocco was sort of changed into "Sha'b yurid isqat al-fasad," the people demand the downfall of the corrupt. And there were a few small, very radical leftist groups who would say "Sha'b yurid isqat al-malik," the downfall of the king, but it's really it's very marginal position. It's very dangerous. So this make-believe democracy is not only continuous because of this sort of semi-popular base, but I think it also has to be said, being in Europe, that it's maintained its power base because of enormous Western support. I mean, Western support going really deep, like former U.S. ambassadors of Morocco being now its official lobbyists, Brookings Institute in America selling this idea of Morocco being sort of the model states. And this is partly related to the fact that Morocco experienced radical or comparatively big changes compared to other Arab countries after the late King Hassan Thani died and Mohammed Sadis took over in 99. What Mohammed said is what Mohammed VI did was very, very smart, and he immediately set up this Equity and Reconciliation committee, kind of in a sort of copy of the South African model, to sort of investigate and reconciliate the bloody years known as the years of lead of his father. And so he came with this kind of reforms from above, and it was a kind of a unique experiment, to be honest, compared to other Arab Middle Eastern countries. So through this sort of reforms from above, this reconciliation committee and changing the family law, the Mudawana, Morocco was sort of seen as a shining example for the Arab world. Of course, at the same time, this is mostly used for propaganda reasons and for public relations, because one of the bottom line reasons why Morocco receives so much support in the West is not so much because of its track record on human rights, but it's one of the key allies of the United States, and it's a very good friend of Israel. But regardless, what was surprising for a lot of us was that, like the shocking images that were beaming through our screens and TVs from Sidi Bouzid and later Cairo, also a defiant rebellion erupted in Morocco in 2011. And the national demo that was called for the 20th of February led to its name, the 20 February movement. And this was really deep, and the anger was very deep. I mean, of course, mainstream media never showed any of these images, but I'm talking about burning of police cars and attacks and storming of intelligence buildings. There's fascinating video material from Sidi or Beni Bouayash and Husseima, where people went in to police stations and security buildings, kind of similar to the images we've seen on a larger scale in Cairo, when people went into the Mukhabarat offices. Of course, this wasn't all just positive and inspiring. The Makhzen responded with very, very harsh measures. Many people were killed in the first months of the demonstrations. But you can't also be surprised about the response, because even if it's retrospective, I mean, it's fair to say that the country really was on a sort of moment of breakdown. Port cities like Tangier were set alight. Thousands of people would march from Nimakada to the central Medina of Tangier. It was something extraordinary and something many of us hadn't seen. And the backlash was kind of expected by activists and by social movement. But what is important to understand in terms of the Moroccan strategy to contain the rebellion is something I think is important to discuss in terms of also human rights and democratic rights, is that the Moroccan state immediately announced a combination of reforms and new constitutional rights. So what it did was it immediately divided the sort of activist, progressive elements of the social movements from a large part of society which wanted just some changes, but not it hurts. Some changes, but not crucial challenges to the state structures. So basically, it immediately announced a referendum, and that really sucked the energy out of the movement, and it made it very hard for activists to keep promoting the idea of radical change. And it announced a new set of laws. But what is, of course, sad to state is that most of the activists who were announcing in their banners, on their Facebook groups, that this was one big scam, turned out to have been very right. Not even 2 years after the new constitution and some of the new progressive laws, we've seen a reverse of these changes, and now a kind of sort of almost the same narrative as we hear about Egypt, where it's said that the situation is even worse than before or during Mubarak. This is a situation also now in Morocco. Not only have the changes that were implemented in 2011 as a way to silence dissent been reversed, some of them have actually even been replaced by even harsher measures, and also in terms of press freedom and freedom of expression, even worse measures than people are comparing it with the years of lead, Ayyam al-Rasas of Hassan Tani. So what we're seeing now is a sort of implementation of a crackdown light. The Moroccan state has learned a lot, and very quickly, from what was happening across the region. A sort of it took a position between the sort of mea culpa of sort of Ben Ali who left, and the crazy violent response of Gaddafi and Bashar al-Assad. So it implemented one of its most important political instruments, which is something that is very known for its capacity to divide and rule. And which is related to the system that Mohammed Boutayeb explained in his talk, that is related to a sort of divide and rule, a very pragmatic divide and rule division within the state structures that had been implemented immediately after independence. So it's not like a sort of ad hoc performance of divide and rule, but he had made sure from the beginning that unions were split into many different factions. Liberal, democratic, and socialist parties were split to be pitted against each other. But to basically end my talk, not on a pessimistic tone, although I don't want to artificially end with a cry for revolution, as if nothing has happened in the last year that suggests the opposite. I think that what people have said throughout the day is very important, that we need to see the current events also in Morocco as part of a very long-term process that is being faced by many downturns. So, I mean, it is undeniable that something happened in 2011 that is very hard to reverse. Even if laws are being reversed and changed, genie is out of the bottle, and the politics of fear was dealt with on the streets. And the fact that people continue to go on the street after having faced the backlash is evidence for the fact that the politics of fear is not anymore the hegemonic force of the Makhzen. So I think that we cannot deny. We have to maintain as part of our success. but the counter-revolution has also set in. And I think that it's important to make a regional connection here. And that is that the counter-revolutions in the region are very much also of influence in Morocco. It's not just a counter-revolution in Morocco in terms of its own shabiha, its own propaganda, but in my fieldwork in Morocco, one of the things that is very clear is that the media news focuses very much on Syria, and it's very clearly meant to insert a certain psychological framework of what revolutions or uprisings mean. So basically what it's saying, if you want revolution uprising, this is revolution uprising, civil war, bloody warfare, etc. It doesn't hardly show anything about the ongoing debates in Tunisia, etc. The crackdown on Egypt also is something that has been played out in the Moroccan consciousness. So that's one sort of regional aspect I want to bring in when we discuss about different countries. We also need to say that they're so organically linked. The last thing I want to say is that of a note of optimism, although it's very harsh, the fact that the social and political movements in Morocco have cross-fertilized with the with the sort of economic union movement is extremely important. The general strike last year in October that Mohammed talked about was not just a strike that was organized and celebrated by union activists, but the same young activists of the 20 February movement were out there in the street in solidarity with economic demands. So what we see now is a sort of synchronization of the social and sort of human rights and social change demands and issues with sort of social economic demands and conditions. And I think this opens up different possibilities that also forces us to sort of rethink or redefine what we mean by revolutions, to not just redefine it by answering revolutions come with counter-revolutions, but also what do we mean by deepening of revolutions in times of counter-revolutions. And I think this is something also that other countries maybe can learn from, despite all the sort of negative experiences in Morocco. The fact that it manages to organize a general strike and is continuing to unite the labor unions in direct communication with the activist groups is an important sign. There's much more to say, but I leave it here, and if there's any questions, completely.
Thank you very much. Sherif.
Okay, so 4 years after the Arab Spring and the uprisings in the Middle East, we need an evaluation. We need to have a moment of just sitting down and seeing where this is going. As one who participated in the events in 2011, participated in most of the demonstrations and sit-ins and marches that took place around this year and the years after, I can claim that one of the main reasons, one of the main goals was to achieve a proper democratic society with a democratic regime, with a real understanding of what democracy is. 4 years from now, we can see there is a drawback to this process that we wished for, or at some point we thought that it already started. What challenged this process and brought us to what the situation that we are having here? There are some challenges. One of them is the obvious one, which is the old regime trying to come back, just to re-establish itself, to regain what they lost, to gain their popularity, to gain their power, all the losses that they suffered, and whether on political side or even economic side. I think this is a very classic fight and obvious, and I don't think this is what really worries me, and from what I have seen in the last year or year and a half, which is the most severe challenge, which I think is coming from the people themselves. What happened is that we had what I would say as a stab in the back. The moment that we were fighting for the rights of the people, we went to the streets to demand rights and freedoms and better life and social justice and bread freedoms for everyone. The majority didn't want this for the sake of promises of stability and security, which is, I would understand, it's very obvious in in psychology that people would have those needs for stability and security. However, that the reaction to against what the uprisings and the demands of freedoms and rights was too severe that it completely ruined the whole process, and that's how we ended up in what we are now. So I can completely understand what happened in the 30th of June 2013 when millions, as claimed, that went against the Muslim Brotherhood regime. However, what we sacrificed around that time was the whole democratic process that we already started, and we could have done it in a more democratic way. For example, I personally believe that if the leaders of the army would have forced the regime to have a referendum at this point, they would have had a much better democratic process around that time. But the massive pressure on the army leaders from the people was the main, I would consider the main reason that how the regime around that time would be the army leader, how they cracked down on the whole democratic process, and we ended up in what we are now. Those people who would support the suppressive regime in a democratic way, they represent the majority, definitely, so they can act as a democratic process. However, the outcome is not democratic. So they used the same weapons and tools that we had. So we thought that we have this weapon of mass demonstrations, so we would call for justice and freedoms and rights. They stole those weapons from us. So as they are the majority, so it was much easier for them once they decided to go to the streets to have a demonstration that is demanding to end all demonstrations to come after. So this was a democratic tool that was used against democracy, which I believe that's what much more dangerous on a democratic process than a suppressive regime with a obvious fight from a dictator or a tyrant. Those who would support a suppressive regime or for the sake of security and stability, they mainly they have some trends in the way they think and the way they act. Mostly, from what I have seen and studied, they don't really know the law. They have some of the misunderstanding of what the legal aspect of the things. So you will see them at some point supporting a crime done by the police against demonstrators, and they think that this is not a crime because the demonstrators were kind of breaking the law, so the police would act like this. However, if they had much understanding of the law and the process of dealing with demonstrations, they wouldn't have come in this stand against demonstrators. Also, for example, they are much willing to give up their freedoms and rights willingly. So they completely understand, and they are giving up those for the sake of a promise from this regime that they would have alleged stability and security, which is definitely, at this point, we know that it's a fake promise, and the regime it's not really able to provide this protection and security and stability. Also, one point that they don't understand the international aspect of human rights. So they would think that human rights are values and idealistic ideas that some they would call like the activists have, and like some dreamers that they have at some point calling for a utopia or an ideal world. However, that once they understand that those the human rights is a legal aspect, and it's something that so this there is a legal aspect of human rights. So once you start talking to them about what would be a human right, they would say like we don't need human rights now. We are in a situation that it's not compatible with human rights, while completely undermining that the fact that human rights were made for those specific situations. Those laws were made when it's a severe situation, where people are really threatened, and the regime is going violating, committing crimes. So this point was very common lately, that people would counter human rights openly. Like, they would say, we don't want human rights, we don't want democracy, and it's something that you would hear from a majority of the people. So I think before fighting a suppressive regime, we need to deal with this issue. I'm not willing to have a stab in the back again in the future when I go, and willing to die for other people's rights. I am being honest. I can't just go fight for the rights of people who would be happy to see me dying. So I think my fight now is to deal with those people mainly by awareness. They have to know. I would spend the rest of my life just teaching, like preaching, what I can see it. People have to know what are the laws. They have to know exactly what the laws of their country, what the laws that they are living in, the constitution, even the constitution that passed by the military regime. The constitution you can still stick to provisions that people don't really understand. Yeah, مرتضى في إيه? And also one last point that I would like to that would be an approach to deal with this, is to bring the language of the law in a simpler way that would common people understand. And there is a school of thought in human rights now. It's called vernacularization of human rights, which is mainly bringing the complicated language of the law into a more simple way that you can deal with, the common people can understand. I think if we dedicate the coming years, I would say maybe the next 5 years, to teach people, to make sure that they have at least the basic understanding of rights, the basic understanding of legal aspects. Once we are in the real fight with the regime in the future, I think it will be much easier, and then it will be a fair fight to begin with. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. I'm sorry, I just don't feel well. I have headache, so excuse me if I lost the focus. But I'll talk mainly about Bahrain. In August 2010, when the government of Bahrain started to arrest the leaders and public figures of Bahrain, it was in the middle of August. I wrote in my Facebook that if there is a mind on this regime or on these rulers, that they will listen and will start a real dialogue to reform, for a reform purpose. They will serve us many years and maybe bloods on the street if they just listen and think logically. Less than a week they arrested me in beginning of September 2010 on the allegation of plotting to overthrow the regime, or I forget the charges. So. But I was in jail until mid-February when the big uprising happened in Bahrain. If they listened back, these regimes, to so many calls back that you have to sit with your people, you have to talk with them, to negotiate. The power, it doesn't work in this time that you have absolute power and your people is just suffering from repressive or whatever. Today, as we gathering here, we are marking the anniversary, the 4th anniversary of the revolution in Bahrain, which started on 14th February. I know it's the Valentine's Day, but it's the day that the king issued the new constitution from one side. I heard my friends here say that their king was smart to issue a new era or a new face of Moroccan with the reconciliation and these things. Our king did the same when he came to the power in '99. he did this national chart, and he was promising with a better day or a beautiful days that he will come with myself in the power. I will give you the freedom. I'll give you the parliament. Everything you wanted, you will get it from my time. Just say yes for that national chart. And when the opposition believed him and signed yes, it was in 14 February 2001. After 1 year, he issued a constitution which is far away from freedom, that he will have around 60 to 70% from the parliament, that he can control the parliament, and he is appointing the prime minister and appointing the ministers, and he is the head of the judiciary council, so all the powers under his hands. So we are gathering today, and it's the 4th anniversary of the Bahrain uprising, and the people there inside Bahrain, I was just following the news, they are protesting, and there was a life onion. They are trying to attack him. I want to talk about this specific, that the 14th February in 2011, there is something happening. Every 10 years we have in Bahrain a revolution or an uprising. Every 10 years. We have it in 94, we have it in 83, we have it in 72, we have it in 65, in 53, and go on. It's every 10 years. But there is something different in this generation. I mean, this generation which is created and exploded this revolution in Bahrain, they are different than us in a way that when I went into the Pearl Roundabout after they released me in February 2011, I saw them that they have that I cannot explain it, but it's kind of dignity that nobody should break us anymore. We will not live like our fathers or our grandfathers used to live. We know exactly what is our right, and we know exactly how to get it there, and we know how to rule our countries. We don't need anybody to rule our country instead of us. We are well educated, we know our right, we will do it. This is the difference between this generation and the other generation, at least for Bahrain I'm talking. And that's why after 4 years from what's happened to the Bahrain revolution, it didn't happen to other countries of Arab Springs. There are an army coming from outside, from Saudi Arabia, United Emirates, just to silence and kill the people there. There are money coming from all the GCC countries just to help the government not to give any freedom to its people, just to buy weapons, buy whatever you want, but don't give them any freedom. And there is a silence from the media, from the international media. Really, if you see a story covered by one of the leading media, either here in British or United States, nobody wants to cover Bahrain. There is a public relation companies working to give a brightening. If you search Bahrain on YouTube or in Google, you will see a Formula One. You will not see demonstration or something. This is the work that public relation is doing it. Public relation companies is doing it for the Bahrain to appear on the internet like it's a country with this two tower, like Financial Harbor or whatever they call it. And there is this, we have the F1 race, which is watched by 40-50 million. And we have this beauty green, I don't know from where they took it, because they destroyed all the green in our land. But after all of this, I mean, the whole world seems to be against the Bahraini uprising. Nobody wants this uprising to survive or to win or to move forward. And still, we have more than 3,000 political prisoners, and more than 100 died, comparing to a country with 700,000 citizens. And they are still fighting, and they are still on the street, and they are still. What's the difference in this generation? That they are still on the street, no matter what's going on. They said, I hear them say that we will not go back. It's the future of our kids. It's the future of our. Our security now, the situation that the regime has done it in Bahrain, that our security is to don't have security in Bahrain. I mean, it's not secure to just sit in the house, because they will come to raid your house. They will come to crack your cars. So the security is not to have security unless there is a real dialogue in Bahrain. I think that's it, but I just want to highlight one last point, about the regime. It's apply on Bahrain and apply in Egypt and in Syria and in everywhere you see. When the regime start to crack down the revolution and the protesters, they didn't go to the old power, what I call them the old powers. They didn't go to the public figures for the religions or for the sectors they go for the youth activists. They go for the bloggers who are tweeting or covering the revolution and put them in jail, like Ala Abdel Fattah in Egypt and in Syria, Razan Azawi and Zaytuna, and in Bahrain, me and other bloggers. They go to the youth activists directly and they gave them a hard time. For example, I'm sentenced to 15 years, and Ala is supposed to be, I think, for 10 or 15 years based on the charge. That's the regime sense that these youth or the activists are dangerous for their future, so that's why they are attacking them to silence. Thank you.